I just remember walking the boardwalk because I'd never been to Atlantic City, and just how beautiful it was. You know, just I live right. I can look out my window. I can see the Pacific Ocean in L.A. So to me, to live near the ocean is the greatest way to live. So I just think it's so beautiful.
And so for this show, is this going to be like an evening with, or is it something more specific? What do you have planned?
I kind of, you know, the shows vary from show to show. My basic analogy is always that it's a party with Marty. It's like if you were having a party at your house and you had a piano player there, and there happened to be a mic, I would jump on the piano and, you know, do 100 minutes. That's kind of the philosophy. So characters will show up, songs will be done, people will be brought up from the audience. So it's a combination of set and improvised and a lot of characters showing up. Jiminy Glick will interview someone, Ed Grimley will show up, Jackie Rogers, you know, Irving Cohen. It's like me hosting Saturday Night Live if I was the host and all the cast.
And so you have sort of a framework, and then you kind of can change it around if you need to, or
right. You know, I don't like to tour shows. But what I like to do is like every couple of months do a concert, and it keeps you always loose. Because I think that with audiences at a certain point in your career, they're not so interested in if every joke works, as much as did that guy seem loose. Was the hang? Did you feel you had a hang with him? Did you feel there was a connection made?
Right.
That's almost more powerful than, you know, joke A was better than joke C.
Right.
And so to keep in that frame of mind, you have to not let a lot of grass grow, you know, beneath your feet between shows.
And then do you have a piano player or somebody with you to sort of you know, work with, or?
Yeah, they'll be singing and stand-up and the whole thing. Yeah, Jeff Babcock. Jeff is the keyboard for Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, and you really came up through song and dance, right? That was the first thing you were doing. Was Godspell was the first big thing you did, and that was that sort of your aspiration, was to be more of a song and singer kind of performer?
I think I wanted to do plays and I mean, my first job out of college was Godspell, and it was the same for Paul Schaefer and Gilda and Eugene and Andrea and Victor Garber and all this group of people. And I think that, you know, we still talk about it when we get together. So I think that I had so much fun, I wanted to continue doing that, you know. And I didn't really until 20 years later I continued doing it in Canada. I did lots of shows and then ultimately Second City Stage. But from 79 on, when I started doing television down here in the States and then SCTV and Saturday Night Live and movies, I didn't do anything on the stage until I returned in 92 to do The Goodbye Girl, which was on Broadway. And then Promises, then Little Me, and Fame Becomes Me.
Is that something you want to do again?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever I finish it, I always think, well, I know I'm not going to do that again. If I do anything again, it'll be, you know, one of an ensemble with a play going, come in, Inspector, sit down. I think my wife is guilty, you know, just very calm. Because the shows I do tend to be insane and running around. And when you don't have an understudy, you just live with that pressure of, oh, my God, do I cancel? You know, you don't want to ever cancel a show, so it's a nightmare.
Now, with the characters that you'll be bringing out, you know, are they sort of evolving over the years? Do they age? You know, how do you change them, or do you feel like the audience wants to see them sort of locked in a certain place from when they first got to know them? Or
you know, I think that characters like Franck was a character I never did in the shows, just because I couldn't think of anything to do. You know, what would he talk about? Oh, look how beautiful you look. You know, I didn't know what to do.
Right.
And then one night I was at dinner discussing why I thought Obama would beat Hillary, and I thought, oh, maybe that's what it is, you know, because I was maintaining it was all about style and not about necessarily content, and therefore you go, oh, what a great shallow approach to it all. And so I'll have Franck discuss style. So it's not about the characters are the age they are, but it's really about, do you have something new to say? Jiminy Glick is always easy because he's improvising an interview with a brand new person. So he's just a guy who exists, whether he's Merv Griffin, Jay Leno, or any of the guys.
And you often, you sort of send up certain, or you sent up certain sort of Hollywood types. I'm curious, are these characters still out there, or has the Hollywood type sort of changed?
In the old days in SCTV, for example, you'd satirize kind of a lounge singer cheeseball. You can't do that anymore because there's no frame of reference. You can only satirize something if the audience actually knows what you're satirizing. But what remains in show business, which is even funnier to me, are morons with power. You flip around TV and you see someone who has a show, like especially in daytime, and you say, wait a second, that person not only has a show, he has a staff. And he has people who are scared to screw up his lunch order. And that's the most fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. So that thing never changes. All the way back to, if you look at Richard Nixon, admitting to the audience that he doesn't know where those 18 minutes went, and he's lying.
Yeah.
And he knows he's lying. And there's sweat above his upper lip. That's as broad as anything can be.
You were sort of developing your characters. Were there role models that you had, admired?
I was inspired by Jonathan Winters, and very inspired by Nichols and May, and Dick Van Dyke and Jackie Gleason, Don Knott.
Mm-hmm.
These people that would play characters, but they were so real, and they weren't necessarily doing any jokes. Jonathan Winters didn't do jokes. He just created those little slices of life in these characters that were hysterical, or were so hysterical about them that we could relate to them as normal people, even though they were heightened.
And so when you venture into drama, when you did the season on Damages, is that just sort of creating a character, but this sort of one that has to sort of remain a little bit more in a box?
To me, it's just a different muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't know, if you work out, it's doing biceps instead of legs. It's still going from the same place, which is a real person, a real situation. But you don't have to heap on as much absurdity or bizarre logic that a sketch character might have to follow. And try to find the sincerity and the reality of it. I find it in a strange way easier because if you're creating characters, you have to also do that three-dimensional reality, but then add this kind of dollop of insanity without going over the top. It's not about going broad or not, just going over the top. If you buy a pair of shoes and the guy's nuts, he's not trying to be funny, but he's hilarious.
Now, I also want to ask you about the one season of Canada's Got Talent. Now, surely Canada has more talent than one season. I can't believe the show got canceled, got the axe after that.
I know. God bless Canada. And then the perfect example is, even though Canada's Got Talent, ratings didn't merit the pickup, America's Got Talent flourishes in Canada.
Right, I see, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the reality was that it was a newer network, Rogers Cable, and it was a very expensive show for them to do.
Yeah.
And they weren't even picked up in full markets in Quebec. It was one of those situations.
Being in that role, did you relish that kind of experience?
I did. I wouldn't have done it in the second year. That was the irony. I only had a 1-year commitment. I like to do things. I don't like to do extended things. It is that interesting place you find yourself in your career where you don't have to worry about rent anymore.
Right.
And you have even a greater pressure. You kind of say, why wouldn't I be bored at this point? Right. If you've done so much, and if you've done it for, let's say, over 40 years, why wouldn't you just say, I know what I'll do, I'll quit. That'll be exciting.
But show up to work every day.
Yeah, I like doing it. What I don't necessarily want to do always is something similar. So at the end of the year, when you reflect, it's New Year's Eve, and you reflect on your year, and you can say, wow, that was an eclectic range of things you did that year. That's more rewarding to me.
So do you have any interest in writing a memoir?
I don't, do I want to be the 900th person to, I don't know. I'm a little Canadian in that respect. I kind of think like my stories are my stories. Also, so many stories. The best stories I could tell would be over dinner, but not in a book, because they would, I'd be sued.
Really? Okay, well, let's start with some of those then.
You promise you won't print them?
Oh, of course I promise. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, wow.
Okay, well, I think that's everything I wanted to ask you, unless there's something else you want to throw out there, that anything
No,
else you
I
want to
just
mention? Or
want to hit the Borgata.
okay, you picked a good place to come. It's a nice spot. So,
Yeah, right.
Marty, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.